Hello, welcome to Store Stories. Every fourth Thursday of the month, I want to make a video talking about some of the weird things I've had to deal with working at a grocery store over 15 plus years now. Anyway, yeah, this story, I don't have any specific examples because this happens so often. It's just, I feel like I need to talk about it. The main thing I gotta say is, if you do not like the self-checkout lane, don't use the self-checkout lane.
That sounds fairly obvious.
You would think. Before I get started, I really don't care if you like or dislike the self-checkout lane, and neither does the data and tracking systems. If you go through self-checkout, that means you wanted to use the self-checkout lane. Almost every single day, there will be someone going through the self-checkout lane yelling and screaming about how they were forced to use the self-checkout and how much they hate using the self-checkout lane. And oh my god, the self-checkout lane is just destroying jobs. I can't believe they have the self-checkout lane here. But you're going through the self-checkout lane. But every single time, there will be a cashier just standing there.
I feel that might be hyperbole.
Every single time. Every day from 6:30 a.m. to 11 o'clock at night, there will be at least one register open the entire time. And if the supervisor's doing the job, they'll open up more registers if they have more people to call. A lot of time and during the day, more registers will open as, well, it's supposed to open more registers as there's more people shopping, but that's a video for another time. And, well, at the big store on the north end of town, when they're open all night, in the middle of the night, they'll have just the self-checkout lane open. But again, that's another video for another day. And yes, I do agree that they need to have more registers open during the day, or especially in afternoon rush. But the vast majority of the time, when someone's going through the self-checkout lane, yelling and screaming about how much they hate the self-checkout lane, there's a cashier just standing there waiting for someone to come through the line.
You said that you needed more registers to be open.
Yeah, there are times where there's a large group of people trying to check out at the same time. We won't have registers open, and frustratingly enough, there won't be anybody in any departments to call. And I do feel bad when I'm running self-checkout lane and they don't have enough registers open, and there's nothing I can do because I'm running self-checkout and there's not enough registers open. But the tracking system in the store shows that only 15 to 20% of people standing in a line that's longer than a person checking out and one person standing in line. And that's the entire day. Is 80% of people are checking in a line that's less than one person in front of them.
So, you want people to wait in lines?
Oh no! The poor little snowflake doesn't want to wait their turn in line. And more often than not, the person in front of them is already at the payment stage. And yes, sometimes the lines do get rather extreme. But if you're going through the self-checkout line to avoid standing literally second in line, then you wanted to use the self-checkout lane. And I've seen the data. And the fact is, the majority of people do use the self-checkout lane.
It is a slim majority.
Well, that's 55%. That's still a majority.
That is more like half.
Fine, I'll concede to that. But still, that's half, or at least a little bit over half, of customers choosing to use a self-checkout lane when they could have gone through a regular register. And if you do like using a self-checkout, they are pretty handy. If you have just a couple little items to check out real quick, you just run into the store, grab a couple things, and head out. It's great to avoid the person doing the monthly shopping, which is another video in itself. But the self-checkout lane is not a replacement for the traditional cashier regular register. It's just not going to work out that way. So they're not going to get rid of a register where someone's going to ring you up at, which is one of the concerns of people being forced to use the self-checkout lane. But the reason that the self-checkout lanes are getting more and more common and they're adding more and more self-checkout lanes, is people are using them. It's just that simple. I'm a cashier. I was a cashier at a grocery store. I was checking just the other night, and my register, according to the tracking system, kept going inactive because everybody was going through the self-checkout lane. If you're going through self-checkout, you chose to use self-checkout. The register over here is fine and ready, waiting for someone to come through, but no one's coming through. But on the other side, there is two major hardware store companies. I think they're hardware store companies. I don't want to mention names of companies in this video series because I can get dramatic. But anyway, one of them had self-checkout lanes, and people threw an epic tantrum. And then eventually they got regular registers, and eventually it phased out the self-checkout altogether. Basically, it's because people stopped using them. And another rival retail grocery store company, I've read a couple articles online saying they're just totally getting rid of them because they're just not worth the hassle of having in the store when people aren't using the self-checkout lanes. I kind of doubt the accuracy of these articles because one's dated 2011, the other one's dated 2015. So I don't know if those articles are accurate, whether they're actually phasing out from those companies. But seriously, if people stopped using the self-checkout lanes, they would get rid of self-checkout lanes. I would guarantee you. And yeah, there's the other people arguing that they're trying to get rid of people working, but if the fact is, if the customers stopped using the self-checkout lanes, they would get rid of self-checkout lanes. But people are using the self-checkout lanes even when they don't like using the self-checkout lanes. Oh no, they have to stand in line. That line is outrageous. I just refuse to stand in that line. Then you liked using the self-checkout. The computer doesn't care what you think about it. The fact is that you went through the self-checkout lane. So if you like the self-checkout lane, you use the self-checkout lane. If you don't like the self-checkout lane, you don't use the self-checkout lane. It's basically that simple. But yeah, that's that current store story. I just wanted to rant for a little bit. This was a little bit longer than I thought it was going to be, but anyway, I'll try to edit it down. But anyway, thanks for watching. Have a good day. And stay tuned for next store stories. It's the fourth Thursday of every month, store stories. Hopefully I make some money on YouTube before I get fired for doing this. But have a good day.